So, I'm going to talk a bit about Anglicisms today. What are they? Where do they come from? Why do we have them? And should we avoid them? And I am going to start off by showing you a video from, I guess, around 15 years ago, which I judged on people's clothes and the Nokia 3310. It's a great phone. About a phenomenon called Denglish. I hope the sound that works.
Denglish, as it's become known, is often used for television advertising campaigns and billboards. Tristana Moore has been out with her phrasebook.
In my daily life, I use English words as well, and I like talking in English.
Germany is becoming a more international country.
What do you call the German language when it's mixed up with English? Try Dinglish. The word itself would make any language purist feel uncomfortable. But some Germans are now saying enough is enough. They're fed up with the fact their mother tongue has been corrupted.
When you come to Germany, you find English words on every corner of the city. Even if you go to the toilets of the railway station, you find McLean. You have to go to McLean. If you try to get in contact with someone, you have to use your handy, which is a German word for the mobile phone.
English is a very, very popular Sprache. It's halbes Deutsch, half English, and it's basically what most Americans speak for the first 10 to 15 years that we wohn here in Deutschland.
This American comedian based in Berlin produces shows using a mixture of German and English words. She reckons Germans need to loosen up a bit.
This is still a very traumatized country. It's been through a lot. And I think holding on to that purity of language is a reaction to that. On the other hand, you have to go, well, relax. It's not going to ruin anything. The German language will go on forever.
Also, These ist, wir brauchen jetzt
At this school, children are taught the German language in all its purity. But still, the head teacher says people must have the right to express themselves.
I don't think it's an issue for politicians to make politics about. People pick up language, people use language, and you can't introduce a law how people should use language.
Hallo, ich hätte gerne einen Coffee to go. Toll, bitte. Ah, sorry, mein Handy klingelt. Es ist nur mein Boss, nicht important. Danke, tschüss. So, if your German isn't perfect, don't worry, you can always improvise. Tristana Moore, BBC News, Berlin.
So das ist nicht so gut oder nicht?
Yes.
Years ago.
I guess so. Yeah. Looks old, yeah. No, okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Here.
Nothing has changed.
Denglish was the theme of this video, which is, yes, a common term when talking about English words and constructions in German, like the mix of English and German. But what the lady at the cafe did just now in the last clip is also called code switching, which is alternating between languages within one single conversation. And that's not only something you do with your native language and English. I think a lot of us expats also code switch a lot in German. Like, had such a shitty day, had to go to the Bürgeramt for my Meldebescheinigung. Those words that you can't really translate. It's also a kind of code switching. And code switching also obviously requires multilingualism. You have to talk the languages you're switching between. But it's not necessarily so that the better you speak, the less you, or the more you code switch. And also that conversation in the cafe could have happened even if the person ordering her tall coffee to go didn't know any English, because if the coffee is called a tall coffee to go, then that is just, yeah, you don't have to know the English if it's actually called that. Yeah, that was just some words about Dinglish. And before we start with the Anglicisms, I wanted to introduce some terminology in general about loanwords. When it comes to loanwords, regardless from which language, you talk often about loanwords and calques, where a loanword is a word borrowed without a translation. In English, we have words like déjà vu, schadenfreude, smorgasbord. There are, like, in English, loanwords. So you can say, oh, I just had a stranger's déjà vu, which is French then. A Gallicism instead of an Anglicism, they are called. The calques are words borrowed through a more or less direct literal translation, like the French marché aux puces, that have become... Oh, this is very small, I see now. Is it... Maybe... It's okay. Oh. That has been translated into flea market, flormarkt, loppmarknad in Swedish. Also, I learned now that why we call it rainforest in English is a calque from German, Regenwald. So yeah, that was a little bit about loanwords in general, and now I'm gonna go over to the Anglicisms. So an Anglicism is an English word, sentence, or another element used in another language. They can come as nouns, or verbs, or adjectives. All of these are examples in German then. They're pretty common. These are also what we call the open classes in parts of speech, which get a lot of influx from both from other languages, but also neologisms in general. There are also closed classes like pronouns or preposition. It's very rare that we get a new word for with or him. So they are the closed classes. And these examples are clearly loan words. They are just taken from English into German. But actually also the calques count as Anglicisms, which makes it a bit tricky when you want to do research on them or something, because you actually have to know exactly how and when they came into your language to be able to even identify them as Anglicisms. So not only the software is an Anglicism, but also the Swedish equivalent mjukvara, which means literally software. So actually both of them are Anglicisms. But only one is easy to identify as such. Another common classification, which also is the one that I like to use, is adoptions and reproductions, where the adoptions are the loan words. They are just taken, adopted into the language. The reproductions are reproduced with material from the own native language. Yeah. The adoptions, as we have seen, are directly transferred. El look in Spanish, the software in German. There can also be adaptations in orthography, like the spelling, basically, of the word. Like the Swedish nerd is spelled nerd. And here we have Icelandic sound check. Do you see well enough, really? Okay. Another thing that has to happen for a word to be able to adopt is that it has to be integratable in the grammatical system. For German, that means that for a noun, you, for instance, have to be able to put the genitive on it, des Killers, die Waffen des Killers. For a verb, you have to put it in different tenses, downgeloadet. And the last example is Swedish again, where a noun has to be able to have the suffix, in this case the definite plural, hashtaggarna, the hashtags. And I will actually come back to this definite plural because it's, or this problem with suffixes, because it's one of the problems when adopting, and the reason why some languages aren't adopting as much as others. And then the reproductions, the cogs, are more or less literally translated words. Network has become nätverk, online has become en ligne. Well, yeah, but there are also partial reproductions, which actually, when you start thinking about it, you see them everywhere. It is when one part of a composite word is translated, reproduced, and the other part is adopted. Like Webseite instead of webpage, Cloud-dienst instead of cloud service. And this is actually pretty common, and it's almost always the last part of the composite word that is reproduced, so the first part is the adopted part. And that's because of how composite words are built up in German and in a lot of other languages. That is the first part, that is the specifying part, like what kind of site, website. And there's of course a need for that first part, then the specifying part, to be as specific as possible, which you can like convey with an English word that you adopted. Also, it's easier to integrate, because in German, for instance, the cases, and for verbs the conjugation is going to be marked by suffixes, and that's also the last part of the word that's going to be that is going to happen to. So it's easier to integrate if the last part of the word is from the own language. But we also have exceptions to this. Back factory, the last part is adopted and the first part is reproduced. So yeah, you can think of that when you buy your Schlippen, that it's an anomaly in partial reproductions. We also have our beloved pseudo-Anglicisms, words that seem like they are English adoptions, but they aren't. They can't really be translated back into English without speaking incorrectly, and we have tons of examples of this in, I think, every language, basically. Handy bima la lady shave, have fun for Spanish. Afterfooting also. After work in Swedish, yeah. There's a really nice article about this in the Bubble magazine also. Well, then why are there adopted Anglicisms in our languages? There are several reasons to adopt an English word, as you may guess. Maybe first and foremost, the development in technology and a lot of other areas where English is the lingua franca is faster than for instance, the French Academy in France or other advising councils who are trying to keep up and translate these words, if that's the policy they have. But the development is so fast that by the time they're done with deciding what the word is gonna be, it's already very within the speakers or among the speakers, it's already there. There's an example of this in Swedish, for instance, where the advising computer terminology group that we have in Sweden suggested a very strange word for instead of hashtag. But now, a couple of years later, we see that hashtag is really, nobody even knows this strange word that they suggested. So, yeah. Fyrkantstag, square tag. Yeah.
In French, it's mot dièse.
Mot dièse, yeah.
Word and then it's the musical sign.
Ah, yeah.
So mot dièse.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna have that as an example.
It's not the word tag at the end.
Sorry?
It
still has the word tag in the end. And that's also interesting, but because tag is already integratable in Swedish, because it is a word that we have that means something else. But so we know how to like put all of these suffixes and stuff. It's also, of course, that there's a big cultural and political influence from the USA in general. Connotations of coolness and modernity, technology, that you can't really evoke those kind of feelings in people without using the English word. And also variation of speech it's an important factor, that suddenly you have 2 words for this thing you want to say. And it's kind of common in journalistic texts, for instance, that in one first you say jusa and then you say nutse. So you can, you have a bigger variation. And of course there's the factor of formal and informal speech, where and also spoken and written. So the more written and formal a certain language context is, the less likely you are to use a lot of anglicisms in it. Maybe you wouldn't write in en e-mail till boss that auf dem Drive haben sie ein Schiedgeschert or something like that, but you would say it probably to your colleague sitting next to you. However, of course, a lot of anglicisms are completely integrated in German, for instance, like this one from Duden. And of course, when they are completely accepted, you can even find them in the dictionary, then this thing with formal and informal is also not so important anymore. Yeah. And just as we have a lot of reasons to adopt an anglicisms within a language community, we also have obstacles to doing so. Why do some languages adopt less and reproduce more? Kind of common is that there's a linguistic purism going on in the country, which is like a political will to preserve a language like it is pure and without a lot of influences. Iceland, for instance, is a common example when talking about this. They have been constantly translating every word coming in. It's something that started when they were under Danish rule, to like not be too Danified, but that has continued on in the internet age. And yeah, I've actually heard somewhere that I don't know if it's a myth, but apparently Minister of Finance in Icelandic is literally translated as he who is counting the sheep. Like that. So it's very but of course that's a super small language. I think they have 300,000 native speakers, so they have another feeling around this that they need to protect. But it's loosening up nowadays as well. And another example is France, a much bigger language community, like really obviously a world language, but that still is very puristic. They have a very strong and important language academy, Académie Française, and they are encouraging this linguistic purism, that you should use French words instead of anglicisms.
It's actually forced by law.
By law, yeah.
Since 1992.
Yeah. Yeah, and also this law that you can't play too many non-French songs in the radio.
25% of the music played broadcasted on radio should be French.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So we have like sometimes like English singing groups sing French song with a very wrong French accent, just to make sure that they will be broadcast.
Yeah. Of course. And they of course then have different suggestions for how you can do things in French instead, and they do influence very formal language, like official language. So every governmental institutions and everything around that, they need to use actually the French words for things. But it has apparently a little effect on everyday speech and even at the universities, because obviously there's going to be linguists and other like scholars who don't agree with this. And also the Wikipedia articles, I looked at them for French for like hacker and hashtag, and they were called hacker and hashtag, and not modis. Yeah. Not that word you said before. Yeah. But I'm just gonna show you three words that you have to use actually when you're working in public service and like official governments and stuff. Just you. Here, maybe you can help me, Vi.
Wait.
You shouldn't say pop-up.
Yeah.
Fenêtre.
Intruse.
Intruse. Intrusive window.
Yeah,
intrusive
window. Sounds ridiculous. Now I'm scared.
Yeah, exactly. And you shouldn't say hashtag, you should say this.
Mot
dièse. Which means note.
Yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
So a dièse is in music when you say like alpha tone up, and but you get like word with alpha tone up. Makes sense, right?
And you shouldn't say cloud, you should say nuage. Nuage, which means cloud. Yeah. So that's a perfect reproduction. Yeah.
What does it mean? You have to use it. If you don't use it, do you get fined or?
No, so you don't. But if you are like I don't know, if you are like a TV channel from service public, you can get fined. Yeah.
Okay. And what is the reason for these laws, despite that they want to keep the language pure?
I think that is the reason. Yeah, they're like, because they see it this way, that the French is a perfectly good language. Why shouldn't we use it? So
it's also to ensure that any citizen can understand, have a chance to understand things, despite the educational part, because French people learning English is kind of random.
Yeah, but I mean, this is also a problem then if it's only these people who say it and the rest of the citizens use another word, then they're not going to understand anyways, and it's going to be a very, So, yeah, but that's French.
It's one of the derivatives of this law, but originally it was not the plan. I mean, but it just that when they have to translate as a law, it just became absolutely absurd, but they were kind of moved to do that for political reasons.
Yeah.
So now there is a law and they have to say it's stupid.
Yeah, so that's really a law. Despite what he said, the guy in the video, you can't make a law. You can. Yeah, there's that. There's also other cultural factors, like traditions in general, not from above, from a political like level, but also traditions regarding loanwords, attitudes towards Anglicisms. Linguistic factors, which might be one of the most important factors, actually. The words are maybe hard to integrate with if they have a lot of suffixes, marking verb conjugation, plural, and cases. It can be trickier. And there's also the factor of homonyms in the own language. Like I just said, the hashtag, that tag is already a Swedish word. That was actually making it easier to adopt a word in that case. But there can also be situations where you adopt a word and then it means something else in the own language, and there's going to be a clash there. But yeah, I'm going to illustrate a bit how all of these factors may work together in the example of German and Swedish. They may seem like similar cultures and languages, and that we would have the same approach towards Anglicisms, but as we have seen, cultural and linguistic factors decide. And for German, we have a lot more adopted Anglicisms than Swedish. I don't know exactly how much, but a lot, really a lot. It makes a difference. German has an easy integration of nouns. Say the smartphone, the smartphones, and you're done. Germany doesn't have that many advising councils on language or academies. They don't have anything like Académie Française. Duden, the, I guess, major dictionary, is a private company.
Institut der deutschen Sprache is one, but it doesn't have the influence.
Yeah,
and there is more than one.
Exactly. Yeah, there's more than one, and
not
they
the political will
no.
to.
And I also you looked at what they or some other institute were saying on anglicisms, and they were just like, yeah, it's fine. It's not a threat to the German language. So.
They can be spelling reforms, right?
Yeah, that was them. Germany, if you look at the discourse in the 80s and the 70s and 80s, it was very puristic also and skeptical towards anglicisms. West Germany had a close relationship to the US and was culturally influenced by them, well, obviously. Which Inghult, that guy, meant was in his research, he stresses that is a part of why German has a lot of anglicisms, this close relationship to the US and BRD. Swedish, on the other hand, has, less adopted anglicisms than German. Nouns are harder to integrate because of the suffix definite plural, for instance, and I mean there can be other things as well, but this is a pretty common obstacle. I'm going to show you what smartphone would look like. It would be one smartphone, and then in the definite singular, it would be smartphone, then, which is, you can say that, but it doesn't look so nice written, and it's a little strange. Two smartphones, that's okay. But then smartphones are in the definite, it doesn't work so well. So that is actually one reason how the language works, that it's less adoptions. And Sweden has a lot of advising councils, like an academy, a language advising institute, a terminology center, and a computer terminology group. So all of them are trying to find Swedish words before it's too late in the case with the hashtag. But they're also, of course, they're do whatever you want a little bit. Sweden has also, so actually Sweden and Germany had the same kind of, discourse before the roughly 1990s.
Something about Germany because during the beginning of last century, actually German used maybe more anglicisms than today. Because of the influence of the UK German industrialization that just stopped during the Nazi.
And also in the Weimar Republic was flooded of anglicisms, all of these girl, showgirl, girl, here and there. Yeah. All of those girls that they had in the Weimar Republic. They were club culture and all of those things too, Well, Sweden didn't really have a very close relationship or anything to the US, but of course culturally very influenced. And we also have the factor of dubbing of movies and TV, which doesn't happen in Sweden. But it seems like that doesn't influence anglicisms that much. Maybe code switching, but there are also a lot of studies that show that the better you know the foreign language, the less likely you are to code switch all the time, because you're then able to transfer and find the word in your own language. But that's also depending on how you are as an individual a lot of the times. So, what should we take from all of this? Is English taking over? It's a very common thing to be upset about, anglicisms and Denglish. It's maybe the linguistic topic that people are most it's ugly and it's silly, and English is going to take over, are the main concerns. But actually most research has shown that it isn't really a threat to the own language. The only real threat that people started talking about in the shift in maybe the 90s, they stopped talking about how bad it was for the language and started to talk about more this loss of domain, Domänenförlust, which is basically where you lose a specific branch. You lose the ability to talk about a specific area in your own language. So maybe if you work at a university in biology, in something very specific, and you work in English, you have no words for what you're doing in your own language, and that can be a problem. And that actually led me to think about a thing here at Babbel, where there might just be one, only be English terminology. And maybe you can answer this, the whole terminology around the agile management. Are there words for that in German or French? Swim lane and whatnot. Swim lane.
There are some, but not very many.
No.
So even in German, I would say I'm a
Ja.
Scrum Master. Ich bin Scrum Master.
Ja.
Ich löse ein Impediment.
Mm.
Wir haben unser Daily Stand-up.
Yeah, genau. Yeah, yeah. So that could be like a mini area where a domain is lost, kind of.
To be fair, though, I wouldn't call that English.
But shouldn't there be Swedish terms because of the Swedish Technology Council? Oh my god.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I should look into this. I'm gonna get back to you on that.
The problem is the use of that. For example, for Norwegian, it's also there. They suggest all the time stuff and for new things coming up. But the question is it really used?
Just
not
for
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you say it's a loss of domain, because I think some of the domains just evolved recently and they were English from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
never there in German.
So actually, we never really lost it. It was never there. So yeah, that's true. I just wanted to wrap this up very briefly by looking at Anglicisms at Babbel. We code switch every day due to our specific terminology, and also the fact that English is Bürosprache, and then we're gonna use a certain kind of mix. And of course there are these Anglicisms, and this is very easy to. This is very important to stress. I think that they are completely integrated in German. Software, heist software. I guess there's no other word for software. No. Integrated in the sense not necessarily not like grammatically integrated, but they are part of the language. Or another one of our languages that we speak every day. Anglicisms in the Babbel official wording. Should the newsletter say online or en ligne? That is, I guess, a case for wording and translations. Because, not necessarily you, but everybody who works with these kind of things, everybody who works with the wording has to take into account, should we listen to the advising councils, or should we do what people actually say? So I guess a balance between the correct usage and the everyday usage is the right way to go. And if you're in doubt, you can always Google, which is basically the result of my whole... I wrote an Arbeit about this in university, and the conclusion was you should Google and find out. It's actually called comparing with parallel texts, so it's very academical. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and if you have any questions...
What is your own opinion about the English?
I love it. I love the English. Yeah. Because it's also easier for me when I don't find a word in German. I can kind of say the English word, and it's kind of okay a lot of the times. Not always. No, but I think this is really interesting. I think it's a very interesting topic, and I don't have an opinion you should talk like this or that. I just I think that language can't be stopped anyways. So.
I think it's also a question of generations. So it's not adapted by old generation. I just have one. An old man can say job. I had job. Ich hatte einen Job. For example.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You said that most studies show that Anglicisms aren't really a threat. And I don't really know what that means. So when would it be a threat, and when would it not be? Or what do these?
I guess
what are the results of those studies?
Yeah, I guess by threat you mean or one means that like we're gonna lose a certain word, or sorry,
Or the whole language.
Or the whole language. Yeah, that we would speak English in Germany in 15 years. That
So this is what the studies are about. Are we going to lose German completely if we start using anglicisms?
There's a guy called Alexander Onisko who did a big thing on anglicisms in German, and I guess he was kind of his Ausgangspunkt, his starting point was to kind of see if those things that people believed in the 70s and 80s were true, which was like, oh my god, it's gonna take over. And his work is like big corpus studies basically, shows that that is not the case. And then actually this thing with the loss of domain is mostly a topic in small language communities like Swedish, because it's not gonna happen in German that you lose the ability to talk about molecular biology or something.
And it's often the fear like about changing the language, not only a word, because that happens all the time. If you go back centuries, it happens all the time, and also like if you go back, and we had a big influence of French to German as well, so it's not a new phenomenon of our time now that another language influences another. And we don't speak all French now, right? Even though here in the area of Posen it was really popular sometimes. And so language is like vivid and it changes all the time. But those studies are often like tackling this, oh, are we all going in 50 years only to speak English and no German anymore, or only like German at home, for example?
No.
It's not
no. No, we don't speak French, but we say we're in the bureau, for instance.
Yes.
So that is like the words are there, but it didn't change anything really. But I guess that was the concern, and still is from some people, that it's going to change everything. Okay.